Hello, Laura here with my monthly interactive card tutorial for MFT stamps. Today we're making a fun birthday card using some of the elements from the Twist and Turn interactive dynamic set. When we pull the tab, the kangaroo moves its head and blows out the candles on the birthday cake. A second message or sentiment is also revealed. The mechanism is quite simple, forgiving, and adaptable to other card sizes, stamps, or dies, and I'm sure you'll have no problem creating it. Let's start by doing some partial stamping to change the kangaroo's mouth. You can't really blow candles while smiling, can you? After inking the stamp, I simply wipe off the mouth with a Q-tip and draw it in with a fine multi-liner Copic pen. There we go. To ink only the body, I actually covered the head with a strip of white washi tape and peeled it off just before stamping. And now I'm making the neck a smidge longer with the same pen. I usually edit out all of my coloring since interactive cards take a little bit longer to make, but this time I left it in just so that you can see the color combinations that I used and to explain why there are two kangaroo bodies with different colored t-shirts later on in the video. As you can see, today I'm not doing any fancy coloring with a lot of detail, and I'm also not going back and forth, saturating the paper and wasting too much ink. I like to work from dark to light and get it done quickly so that I can move on to the mechanism. We're going to fussy cut these images in a moment, so I'm not being too careful with the outlines. I also added some R22 and R20 to the insides of the ears. So after coloring the kangaroo shirt red, I decided that it would stand out more in yellow. So I just want to show you real quickly the colors that I used. Y17, Y15 and Y13. I backed the red-shirted kangaroo with a piece of stick-it double-sided adhesive before fussy cutting it, and actually ended up using it later on. But I totally forgot to do the same with the yellow-shirted kangaroo, so you'll see me using liquid adhesive to adhere it in a moment. And don't forget to color the edge of a stamped and die-cut image with a black marker that doesn't bleed. It'll look so much better, especially against a black background. Adding a couple of drops of glossy accents to the nose and eyes really make them stand out and look more real. And since I already had the dimensional glaze on hand, I decided to add it to the birthday candles as well. To keep these tiny elements in place, I adhered a piece of tape with the sticky side up on a strip of paper. Also, let me mention that I die cut the candles out of cardstock, backed with stick-it double-sided paper. Let's jump ahead a little bit. I've already die cut the 2 layers of cake using dies from the whimsical birthday cake dynamics and a yellow polka dot paper from the Over the Rainbow paper pack, backed with white cardstock. The banner was cut using one of the dies from the Starburst sentiment strips dynamics, and I heat embossed the sentiment from the bitty birthday wishes on the lower edge of it. And here I'm showing you how the red t-shirt doesn't really go with the background panel, but I'm still going to use it as a sort of dimensional adhesive so that the kangaroo body with the yellow shirt and the banner are on the same level. And before we start die cutting the panel, we need to plan and place all of our elements. Before moving on, let me show you a prototype of the simple mechanism. It consists of a sliding panel with a strip of paper glued to the middle of it. This keeps the rotating arm or connector from rotating too far while still allowing it to move. Here's the complete Twist and Turn interactive dynamic set, and today we're only going to use the washers or donut pieces, the circle die, and one of the connectors. The extra holes don't make a difference, so choose whichever you want. So the connector piece will go here, and I've die cut it in black, and the head of the kangaroo will be attached to the rotating brad. That's why we need to cut a hole in our main panel. So let's adhere the dies to the panel with some tape before running it through our die cutting machine. By the way, the rectangular die is the second largest from the A2 stitched rectangle STAX set 1 Dynamics. You can see the size of it in the YouTube description box. Okay, since we can't die cut only the flames, we need to mask the candles so that the yellow cardstock of our pull tab doesn't show through them as well. I just grabbed a piece of thin white paper and drew the shape of the candles on it with a pencil. Then I cut it with my scissors, erased the pencil marks, and glued it to the back of the panel. You could also use some strips of tape for this, but I find the paper a little bit sturdier, so that we can inlay those candles that we covered with glossy accents earlier. And since they're back with sticky adhesive, it's a piece of cake, pun intended, to glue them in their places. It's always best to stack interactive elements so that they don't bend under stress. I used liquid adhesive for this and also layered 4 of the donut pieces. I didn't need all 8 of them because we will only use 1 layer foam adhesive for this card. I die cut a second panel in black with the same stitched rectangle die as before, and now I'm using the main panel as a template to mark the center of the die cut hole. I'm doing it with a white gel pen so that you can see it. Next, let's use a piercing tool to punch a hole through that second panel. We also need a yellow sliding panel that measures 2¼ by 3¾ and now we just have to make sure that the placement is correct and that it's visible through the holes in the main panel. Out of camera, I also cut a strip of blue raspberry cardstock, which is only 3/8 of an inch tall, and stamped the word pull from the interactive label set on it. Here I'm just making sure that the pull tab sticks out far enough, and now I can temporarily adhere it to the panel with some tape while I glue strips of foam tape around it. I'm only adding a short piece of foam tape to the right of the pull tab because we want our connector or interactive element to have plenty of room to rotate. Here's the strip of paper that'll keep that black bar from moving too far. It's only 3/8 of an inch by 1¼ and I added some score tape to the back of it. Let's test it before we move on. It looks perfect, so now we just need to flip it and insert the bar through that sleeve that we just added. There we go, and we're done. Okay, one last try with the main panel in front of it, and we can start assembling everything. I've added more foam tape to the panel, and now I'm just adhering a last piece of it to act as a stop so that our rotating bar doesn't rotate too far. Next, we can mark our sliding panel in order to stamp that second message on it. This card is actually for my daughter Iris, who turns 12 tomorrow. Here I'm checking once more that my blue tab still fits, although to make things easier you could of course just stamp the word pull directly on the yellow pull tab. It's also totally up to you if you want to round the corners of it, but I think it adds a nice touch. Next we can get rid of all of the release paper and adhere the main panel to the mechanism panel. And now, before we finish the card, let's test it one last time. It still works great. Off camera I already added the orange banner to the lower edge of the card in order to ground the birthday cake and the kangaroo. And now we can glue the thick donut piece in place, making sure to center it and to not add any glue to the brad itself. And there we go. I snipped off a piece of the kangaroo's long neck and glued its body to the panel. And now all that's missing is the head. Before the glue dries, we can still adjust it. I used the largest die from the A2 stitched rectangle STAX set 1 Dynamics to cut a piece of pattern paper with rainbow colored dots and adhered it to a white card panel that measures 5 3/8 by 8 1/4, scored at 4 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm carefully peeling off the release paper of my panel. As a last touch, I added some matching enamel dots. Here are some pictures of the finished card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below and I will be glad to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time. Bye bye. Hasta luego.